I never liked airports. Not for the crowds, not for the noise, not even for the delays. I hated them for what they meant. That every time you walked through security, you were leaving something behind. A life, a routine, a truth you were just beginning to accept. Amy loved them. She said the movement made her feel alive. She'd stand near the windows in Concourse C and watch the flights take off one by one, the engines howling through steel and sky, and she'd smile like it meant something, like freedom. But lately, she hadn't smiled at much. The night before the flight, she didn't speak during dinner, just sat across from me, picking at her salmon, her fork moving more than she did. The TV was on in the background, some news anchor droning about a market correction, but the real silence was between us, the kind that builds slowly, layer by layer, until it's part of the walls. When I cleared the plates, she said, "You're going alone." I stopped, hands wet in the sink, turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" She didn't even blink. "The Seattle trip. I'm not going with you. We need space." It landed like a brick. Not a blow, not sharp, just heavy. Familiar. "We've already booked both tickets." I canceled mine. "When?" She stood, taking her wine glass with her. "Does it matter?" No, it didn't. Not really. The rest of the night passed in fragments. I packed in silence. She stayed in the guest room, not officially, just long enough to fall asleep there again. Third night in a row. I didn't ask. What was there to say? We'd been together almost 12 years. Married for 9. And yet, in the last 12 months, I felt like we had both become tenants of the same house. Roommates who used to share something more. Something warmer. The worst part was how subtle the erosion had been. It didn't start with a fight. No screaming. No thrown plates. Just less eye contact. Fewer texts. Less skin. Little things. Her phone screen always tilted away from me. The calls taken in the garage with the door closed. A new password on her laptop. Business trips she never used to take. Always to cities I knew too well, and always when I was swamped with deadlines. And then there was Mark. A family friend. He started showing up at birthdays, at dinners. Always helpful. Always smiling too long. He and Amy would talk about back in the day. Things I'd never heard of. Jokes I wasn't part of. Once, after a dinner party, I saw them standing close in the kitchen, whispering. When I came in, they flinched, like kids caught stealing. I asked her that night, "Are you seeing him?" She looked me straight in the eye and said, "Don't start." That was it. No denial. No confession. Just exhaustion. And somehow that was worse. So when she said, "We need space," I didn't fight her. I didn't ask to talk it through or suggest therapy. I just zipped up my suitcase. Because somewhere along the way, I had accepted that I was living with someone who had already left me in her heart. And now she wanted me gone in body, too. The Uber came at 6:15 a.m. I kissed her cheek. Out of habit, not love. And she didn't even turn her face. The driver was quiet, thankfully. I watched the streets of Denver blur past the window. Cold air against frosted glass. My reflection looked older than I remembered. At the terminal, I went through security like a ghost. Belt off, shoes in the tray, laptop out, arms overhead. Everyone around me looked like they had somewhere to be. I just looked like I wanted to vanish. Gate B42, Seattle. Flight 1803. I boarded early. Group 2. Window seat, 14A. I picked it for Amy, actually. She liked watching takeoff. Said it made her feel like life was still going somewhere. But it was just me now. I sat down, pulled out my laptop bag, and shoved it under the seat. The plane smelled like every other plane, stale coffee and recycled ambition. A woman took the aisle seat, mid-40s, AirPods in, face already turned away. Fine by me. I fastened my belt, checked my phone one last time before airplane mode. No new messages. Just the calendar invite for the meetings in Seattle. Then I closed my eyes. And that's when it buzzed. Just one vibration. The kind that only happens when you're seconds from being unreachable. I opened my eyes, thumbed the screen. One text. From Amy. "You're not flying. I've decided." I stared at it. 5 words. Cold. Absolute. No punctuation except the period, like it was the final line in a script she had rehearsed. My throat went dry. I turned to look out the window. The jet bridge was already gone. The door sealed. No going back. I tapped the screen, tried to reply, but the signal was already gone. One bar, then none. The phone grayed out, then flicked to airplane mode on its own. I held it in my hand for a moment. Just stared. What did she mean? You're not flying? Too late. I was already in the air. Or so I thought. Because just then, the captain's voice crackled through the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've been asked to hold position on the taxiway for a quick technical inspection. Shouldn't take more than a few minutes. Thanks for your patience. A pause. A flicker of something colder than nerves. Not fear. Not yet. But suspicion. I checked the time. 7:52 a.m. We were supposed to be wheels up by 8 o'clock. But now we were just sitting. The woman beside me sighed, adjusted her headphones. I glanced down at my phone again. Now useless. Amy's message just sat there on the lock screen like a warning. You're not flying. I've decided. I didn't know it then, couldn't have known. But that text was the fuse. The plane hadn't moved. But something else already had. At first, the delay felt routine. A mechanical check, a paperwork error, some unseen inspection out on the tarmac. These things happened. People around me sighed, shifted in their seats, pulled out phones and laptops like they were settling in for a movie they hadn't wanted to watch. But I couldn't settle. Not after that message. You're not flying. I've decided. I stared at it again. 5 words. I couldn't stop replaying them in my mind, each syllable tightening like a noose. The signal had vanished the moment the door sealed. My phone was dead to the world. But not me. My pulse thudded behind my ears. Something wasn't right. Amy hadn't just canceled her ticket. She'd waited. Waited until I was physically trapped on a plane. Until there was no way to turn around, to send that. It wasn't just cold. It was calculated. The intercom crackled again. Ladies and gentlemen, we're still awaiting clearance. Just a bit of congestion on the runway. We'll update you as soon as we have more. The pilot sounded calm, apologetic, like he actually believed it was just congestion. But my gut said otherwise. I looked around the cabin. Normal faces. Normal expressions. A mother bouncing her child on her lap. A man across the aisle scrolling through a news app. A teenager watching some cartoon on his tablet. It all looked so ordinary. But ordinary was gone. I opened my laptop. Not to work. I couldn't focus. I needed distraction. No, I needed answers. There was no Wi-Fi yet. No signal. Nothing but my own mind unraveling the threads of what Amy might have planned. You're not flying. Then why was I here? What was she trying to do? I reached down for my carry-on and pulled out the secure drive. A black, palm-sized block I used for remote client access and emergencies. It was encrypted, air-gapped, but it housed a few backdoor access points for our shared accounts. Not the usual portals. Something deeper, older, forgotten by most. Amy didn't know about it. She didn't care enough to ask. That's the only reason I still had access. I plugged it into the laptop and waited. A slow boot, security keys, 2-factor codes, all local, no network. The screen finally blinked to life. And then I saw it. The alert. Joint account. Access suspended. My stomach dropped. I opened the ledger. A red banner glared across the dashboard. Account access suspended by secondary party. Amy Harper. Authorization granted via co-signatory clause 4C. Reason: marital separation. She had triggered the clause. One we signed 10 years ago. It was buried in fine print, a financial contingency for divorce proceedings or long-term medical emergencies. Never used. Never relevant until now. She'd frozen everything. Savings. Credit. My business float account, too, because, of course, she was still listed as emergency backup. It was 7:58 a.m. She'd timed it. The transfer of authority had to be done during business hours, which meant Amy had filed the suspension minutes after I left the house. Maybe while I was still in the Uber. She'd been waiting for the moment I was in the air, or thought I was, to lock the vault. I sat back in my seat. My throat felt dry, my limbs too heavy. I wasn't just flying to Seattle anymore. I was being erased midair. That's when it hit me. The message, the delay, the account. This wasn't just a freeze. This was a removal, a surgical extraction. Like I was a tumor she'd finally gathered the courage to cut out. But she'd made one mistake. She thought I'd already flown. I closed the laptop and stared at the seatback in front of me. My own reflection blinked back at me, faint in the dark plastic. Who the hell did she think she was? The woman I married would never have done this. But the woman I married was long gone. And then, like a second thunderclap, something else hit me. Something worse. The why. She didn't want me to fly, not because she was afraid I'd find out, but because she was afraid I'd be there. In Seattle. My hands went cold. I opened the laptop again and pulled up the flight registry. I had access to employee travel databases through my consultancy. It was meant for logistics scheduling, nothing invasive. But with the right credentials, I could view outbound manifests. Not names, but seats, bookings, flight paths. I punched in the Denver to Seattle route. Flight 1803 mine was listed as boarding complete, hold on taxiway. But another flight, 1817, was departing just 20 minutes after mine. Also to Seattle. Also from Denver. But from Terminal E. I stared at it, and the puzzle clicked into place. I hadn't been removed from the board. I'd been pushed to a different square. Amy wasn't staying home. She was flying to Seattle too. Just not with me. Someone else was. Mark. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. He was the only person who made sense. The one who had been around more and more. The one who kept showing up to our house with excuses. Dropping something off for Amy. Just in the neighborhood. Thought I'd say hi. He'd become a fixture in her life while I'd been busy putting out fires at work. She'd waited for the perfect moment. Waited until I was locked in a seat, sealed in a metal tube, unable to turn around or interfere. And then she'd taken everything, the accounts, the access, the narrative. She was flying out of the same city to the same destination, under the assumption I was already gone. It wasn't a separation. It was a replacement. And the replacement had already boarded. I sat there numb. Not angry, not yet. That would come later. Right now, I was cold with clarity. The kind of clarity that only arrives when everything burns down in front of you, and all that's left are the bones. That's when I checked the terminal logs again. Flight 1817, hers, had just finished boarding. The doors were closing. She had no idea I was still on the ground. No idea that the message hadn't worked. That the signal had died before I could read it. That I was still inside the system, and had just enough access left to hit back. And I did. I plugged in my backup drive again. I couldn't access the banks directly, not from this seat, not without signal. But I didn't need to. I had cached authorization to revoke the POA she'd used. It was a rare failsafe, something I'd written into our digital assets years ago. A redundancy. Back then, it felt paranoid. Now, it felt prophetic. My fingers moved fast. Not with rage, with precision. I stripped her access to the business line of credit. Revoked her digital authorization to sign. Canceled every card tied to our joint account. Flagged the remaining balances for manual review. And then, for good measure, I locked down the brokerage account. Not out of spite. Out of survival. All of it went through in under 2 minutes. Each confirmation echoing like a heartbeat in my ears. The intercom pinged again. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. Unfortunately, due to the delay and incoming weather conditions, our departure has been canceled. Please remain seated while we coordinate return to the gate. Canceled. Just like that. I blinked. The irony felt almost cosmic. Amy's plan had hinged on one thing, that I'd be unreachable. In the air. Powerless. But now I wasn't going anywhere. And neither was she. The cabin erupted the moment the word canceled landed. Groans. Swearing. Phones lifted like talismans, people willing the signal to come back. A man 3 rose up, slammed his tray table shut like it had personally betrayed him. The woman beside me ripped out her AirPods and muttered something sharp under her breath. I didn't move. I just sat there, hands resting on my thighs, heart beating slow and steady for the first time all morning. Because the delay wasn't an inconvenience anymore. It was leverage. We taxied back to the gate inch by inch. The jet crawled like it was ashamed of itself, dragged back to where it started. Somewhere across this airport, Amy was still convinced I was gone. Somewhere across this airport, she was probably holding Mark's hand, thinking she'd already won. That thought didn't make me angry. It made me precise. The seatbelt light clicked off. People surged into the aisle. I stayed seated until the rush passed, until the plane felt hollow again. Only then did I stand, sling my bag over my shoulder, and step back into the terminal like a man returning from the dead. My phone buzzed the moment the signal came back. Not from Amy, from the bank. Authorization change received. Pending review. Good. I walked past gate B42 without looking back. No rush, no panic. Amy's entire plan depended on speed and absence. I had both time and presence now. I found a quiet corner near an unused conference pod and opened my laptop again. Wi-Fi connected. Secure tunnel up. Everything I'd staged offline earlier snapped into place like teeth in a lock. First, legal authority. I pulled up the power of attorney document Amy had used. It was old, sloppy, something we'd signed during a refinancing years ago, when trust was still a given. But she'd overlooked the sunset clause. Most people did. I hadn't. With 3 clicks and a digital notarization request, I revoked it. Not pending. Immediate. Retroactive. The system flagged it for review, but that didn't matter. The authority she'd used to freeze me out no longer existed. Second, containment. I isolated every joint channel. Accounts didn't just close, they froze mid-motion. No transfers in. No transfers out. Cards declined silently. Digital wallets dead. From the outside, it would feel like hitting a wall at full speed. Third, visibility. I flagged the activity as suspicious, not criminal, not yet. Just enough to trigger compliance. Enough to make people ask questions. Enough to make flight manifests and banking timelines line up in ways Amy wouldn't like. I finished in under 10 minutes. Only then did I allow myself to breathe. My phone rang. Unknown number. I didn't answer. It rang again. Then again. Then the texts started stacking up like debris after a flood. Amy. Where are you? Amy. Why are the cards not working? Amy. Read answer me. Amy, what did you do? I read them without emotion. She still thought she was in control. Still thought I was reacting. Still believed I was behind her. Chasing. She was wrong. I checked the flight board. Flight 1817. Delayed returning to gate. I smiled for the first time in months. I didn't need to see her. Didn't need confrontation. Airports are full of drama. People crying, arguing, clinging. I wanted none of that. I'd already said everything that mattered with keystrokes and clauses. Still, curiosity pulled me closer. Terminal E was chaos. A cluster of angry passengers. Agents trying to keep order. Security hovering nearby. And there, near the counter, I saw them. Amy looked small. Shrunk. Her posture tight. Phone pressed to her ear. Eyes darting like a trapped animal's. Mark stood beside her. Useless. Hands open in that helpless gesture men make when plans fall apart and they don't know how to fix it. He looked exactly like I expected. Temporary. I stayed back. Watched. An agent spoke to them. Mark handed over documents. Amy argued. Too loudly. Too confidently. The kind of confidence that curdles into panic when it stops working. Then I saw it, the shift. The agent's expression changed. A supervisor appeared. Amy's phone slipped from her hand. She looked around the terminal like she could will me into existence. I didn't step forward. I walked away. By the time I reached the exit, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Banks, law firms, compliance departments. The machine had started turning, and it didn't care about feelings or intentions. Only timestamps. I got into a cab and gave my home address. The driver asked, "Rough travel day?" I said, productive. When I got home, the house felt different, quieter, not empty, honest. I set my bag down, poured a glass of water, and sat at the kitchen table where Amy and I had once planned vacations we never took. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Amy. Please, we need to talk. I typed back a single sentence. No anger. No explanation. I didn't fly. I paused. Then added the truth she hadn't planned for. And that's what saved me. I set the phone face down. Outside, a plane roared overhead, climbing hard into the sky. Not mine. The first thing Amy did when she landed was call me. I didn't answer. The second thing she did was leave 5 voicemails. Breathless, frantic, every word twisted between confusion and fear. By the 6th message, her voice had started to crack. That's when the apologies began. But I didn't listen to any of them. Because by the time her plane touched back down in Denver, forced to turn around mid-flight due to what the captain vaguely referred to as documentation issues, the cleanup had already begun *N. Not mine. Hers. The investigation had started without her knowledge. It always does when large joint financial accounts suddenly shift, lock, and freeze, especially when flagged with phrases like unauthorized use, suspicious withdrawal pattern, and revoked power of attorney. Compliance departments don't care about marital drama. They care about liability. They didn't ask her how she felt. They asked her for receipts. I was already home when the damage reached her. Sitting in my office, blinds drawn, screen glowing, watching it all unfold in real time, not through her eyes but through the system. First came the email from the brokerage firm, then the call from the family lawyer, then the delayed message from the bank. Per your account request on file, we've escalated the freeze pending further review. Please be advised your access has been formally suspended. She hadn't expected resistance. She'd built the whole plan on speed, on silence, on absence. She thought by the time I noticed, she'd be somewhere else. Not just physically, but legally. Distant enough to control the narrative, frame the retreat as self-care or necessity. That's why she needed me on that plane. Not just to leave, but to vanish. And that's why she broke. Because I didn't. The doorbell rang late. I didn't need to check who it was. I opened the door and there she stood. Not angry, not cold, just undone. The polished calm she wore like makeup had cracked at the corners. Aren't you going to say anything? She asked. I stepped aside, let her in. She walked past me like she still lived here, like the house hadn't rejected her the moment her plan failed. She sat down at the kitchen table, the same one where we used to plan futures. This time she had no laptop, no spreadsheets, just trembling fingers and too many questions. I don't know what happened, she started. The bank said there were flags, that they can't verify my access anymore. The brokerage won't speak to me. The cards are canceled, I said. She looked up. You did that. No, I replied slowly. You did that. I just responded. Her mouth opened, then closed. She didn't expect that. You froze me out, I continued. Filed under separation clause. Used power of attorney I hadn't seen in a decade. You thought I'd be flying when you triggered it. Thought I'd be unreachable, uncontactable, uninvolved. She didn't deny it. Didn't have the energy. Her voice dropped. I didn't want it to go like this. But you wanted it to go. Silence. I let it hang. I let it settle between us like dust. You were on a different flight, I said. Not a question. A statement. She nodded. Slowly. Mark booked it. Of course he did. She looked up. We were going to talk to a lawyer. He knows someone in Seattle. I didn't want to hurt you, Reed. I just needed space. Time to figure things out. Figure them out with him? She flinched. I leaned back in my chair. I wasn't raising my voice. That would have given her power, made it emotional. But this wasn't emotion anymore. This was surgery. You didn't want space, I said. You wanted control. You wanted to write the ending without me in the room. I was scared. Of what? She didn't answer. So I did. Scared that I'd see you for what you are? Or scared that I'd fight back? Her lip trembled. I didn't think you'd even notice. You're always buried in work. That stung. Because it was true. And it was the reason I missed so many warnings. But it was also the reason she underestimated me. I noticed, I said, and I made decisions. Her eyes were red now, not from grief, from consequence. I don't have anywhere to go tonight, she said softly. I nodded. The guest room's made. Towels are clean. A flicker of hope crossed her face. A mistake. This isn't a pause, I said. This is the descent. What do you mean? I stood, walked to the fridge, poured myself water. She stayed seated like a student waiting for discipline. You flew out with him. You tried to gut me financially. You did all of that believing I was gone. And you never asked yourself what would happen if I wasn't. She stared down at her hands. I didn't think I'd have to. No, you thought I'd roll over. Another silence. But this one was heavier. You said we needed space, I said. And I agree. So starting tomorrow, I want you gone. The house is in my name. The accounts are now locked. The lawyer will reach out Monday morning. Anything you want to negotiate, do it through him. She stood up then. So that's it. I tilted my head. No, this is it. I walked toward the front door and opened it. A gesture, not a demand. You chose to leave, I said. This is me letting you finish the job. She walked past me without another word. Her footsteps were quiet on the wood floor, like shame weighed her down. Before she stepped out, she turned. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? I looked her in the eyes. You texted me after the cabin door sealed. You didn't give me a chance. Don't ask for one now. The door closed behind her. I stood there for a long time, not out of regret, just recognition, that the end had already happened weeks, maybe months ago. She was just the last one to realize it. My phone buzzed again that night. Another missed call from Mark. I blocked the number. He didn't deserve a sentence. In the days that followed, everything settled faster than I expected. The bank confirmed the account freeze stood. The lawyer agreed Amy had no standing for financial claims given the attempt to defraud. The investigation was quiet, private. I didn't pursue charges. Not out of mercy, out of disinterest. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted distance. Amy tried to call 3 more times. Then she stopped. I never saw Mark again. And in the quiet that returned to my life, I finally heard the sound I'd missed the most. My own mind without static. I still go to airports sometimes. For work. For meetings. But I don't hate them anymore. Because now, when I watch the planes take off, I don't think about escape. I think about what it means to stay grounded when someone else tries to make you disappear. One text tried to erase me. You're not flying. I've decided. But I didn't fly. And that's what saved me. So now I ask you, was I wrong not to forgive her? Not to chase her down with empathy, softness, compromise? Was it cruel to close the door she'd already unlocked with betrayal? Or was it justice? Not loud, not violent, but calm and clean? You tell me. If someone tried to erase you, would you have opened the door back up? Or closed it for good?